What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another UFC breakdown and predictions video. This time for UFC Vegas 95, Tybura versus Spivac 2. Now, last week we did have a recap video, so make sure you go check that out to see how we ended up doing during last weekend's event. But, well, let's get into this weekend. We got only 10 fights to break down because this card has been an absolute shit show, but it's okay because next week we have UFC 305, Adesanya versus Duplessis, which I am very much looking forward to. But right now we got to get through UFC Vegas 95 first. So let's get the breakdown started. Make sure you hit that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Speaking of rematches, in the main event, we're starting off the card with a rematch, and that is Stephanie Luciano going up against Talita Alencar. Now, these ladies last summer met each other in the octagon for Dana White's Contender Series, where the fight ended in a draw. So basically, the first 10 minutes of the fight, Alencar was able to dominate with her wrestling, with her grappling, and won those first two rounds. Luciano did a great job not getting finished in those first 10 minutes. Alencar has a grappling and jiu-jitsu background. That's what she practiced before she got into MMA later on in her life. Now, Luciano is very much a striker, and that showed in the last 5 minutes of the fight, in that third round in their previous meeting, where Alencar was completely gassed out. She was desperately shooting for takedowns that she was unable to complete, and Luciano was just piecing her up, and ended up being a 10-8 round. So Luciano did everything but finish Alencar in that third round to solidify a draw so that she didn't get a loss on the Contender Series. So I guess both of these ladies ended up getting a contract. I don't remember if it was on the show or what it was. It slips my mind. But regardless, we're getting these two back in the octagon. And even though Alencar seems to be the more dominant fighter throughout the first 10 minutes of the fight, Luciano is coming into this as a favorite. And I think that's rightfully so, because Alencar has had a UFC debut since then, and she showed once again that she slows down, that she gasses out. And Luciano, if she does what she did last time, but a little more effectively through that first 10 minutes, I think she's going to be able to get the decision this time. I think she understands. She hasn't had fought since then, so she's had to worry about Alencar twice in a row now. So I think she understands her game. I think she's going to realize what she needs to do to get things done. She needs to keep Alencar off of her, keep her butt off of the canvas, and just piece her up on the feet. She's the much rangier and taller fighter. Alencar is quite compact, but as long as she can stay off the mat as much as possible during this fight, I think she gets it done with relative ease. Alencar is dominant when she does get the fight to the mat, though. She can control, and she has that grappling threat as well. But I think Luciano can end up getting it done this time, despite the draw in their last meeting. Next up, we got Youssef Zalal going up against Jarno Errens, and I'm surprised this fight is so low on the card, considering there's not much name value on this particular card. But we got Youssef Zalal on the Youssef Zalal. One thing that was actually kind of interesting was these guys have the exact same record, 14-5-1. I don't think I've seen that yet, exact record-wise. That's kind of crazy, but I think he's just the better fighter in this matchup. I think he's more well-rounded. If this was Youssef Zalal in his first stint with the UFC, I probably would be picking Jarno Errens, because I do like Jarno's style. I think he is a decent overall fighter. He surprised a lot of people in his last fight against that Steve Nguyen guy, who was very dangerous, but Errens basically nullified him throughout that 15 minutes and got it done, which was impressive in my eyes, because I had Nguyen in that fight, and I didn't really think Errens was as good as I originally thought. I picked him against Sungwoo Choi last year. He ended up dropping that fight. He had a majority decision loss over William Gomis, which isn't terrible, because Gomis is a technical practitioner who is difficult. It's a difficult matchup in this division. But even though I do like Jarno Errens, especially after his fight against Steven Nguyen, I do think Zalal in this stage, in his second stint with the UFC, I think after the first time in the UFC didn't really pan out for him. I think he did a great job going back to the regional scene, kind of fixing up his mistakes and polishing out his game. Since his last loss to Sean Woodson in the UFC, he's had a draw against Damon Blackshear, went onto the regional scene, got 3 first-round finishes in a row, and then he took on Billy Quarantillo, I believe, on short notice, and choked him out in the second round. That was the very first time I think Quarantillo was subbed. Yeah, it was the first submission loss in Quarantillo's career. His only loss as well. I think it was his last fight. Regardless, I think he's really worked on his game. He's developed that overall skill set, and I just think he's just the better, well-rounded fighter in this matchup. I think no matter where this fight takes place, Yusuf Zalal will be better. And back in the day, before Topuria became champion, I think it was Topuria's UFC debut, he ended up taking Topuria to a decision, which he did lose, unfortunately, but it just goes to show that he is able to hang with the best, considering Topuria did end up becoming champion. Regardless, I think Zalal gets this done. Let's move on. So these breakdowns might be a little sloppy because, excuse me, this has been a crazy week for me, so I really haven't had much time to do tape study, but thankfully I am familiarized with most of these fighters. But next up, we got a heavyweight fight. Diniz going up against Carl Williams. And this might turn out to be a sloppy heavyweight fight. 1 second as I take a sip of my coffee. This is the epitome of a grappler versus striker. We got Diniz on one side, who is a world-class kickboxer. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he was a glory kickboxer. I could be wrong. Regardless, he has a kickboxing background. That was his combat sport before entering MMA, and that's very much what he wants to do in the octagon. He has power. He has the technique to put away a lot of people. He has 7 wins, 0 losses, and all 7 of those victories were KOs. And then we got Carl Williams on the other side. He is very much a wrestler. This guy wants to wrestle his opponents, take him down to the ground, and just wear them out over 15 minutes. That is Carl Williams' game. And even though I can see that path of victory for Carl Williams, because Diniz in his UFC debut was taken down and controlled by Austin Lane, who is not very good. He doesn't really excel anywhere, especially in the wrestling. Austin Lane is typically a striker. But regardless, Austin Lane is a ginormous human. I don't know why my voice is cracking so much right now. 1 second. Excuse me, Jesus Christ. Let's get back to it. So Austin Lane, what I was saying, is a ginormous human being, and if he, regardless of technique, if he gets you on the ground, it's tough to get a heavyweight 6'6" man off of you. So, obviously we can take that with a grain of salt because his skill level isn't too high, and Diniz was controlled in that first round. But a positive that you can take from that is Diniz was able to survive. He comes back and puts Austin Lane out cold in that second round, and that just goes to show you what kind of power Diniz has. Now, Carl Williams on the other side, like I said, he wants to wrestle you. He wants to dominate on the mat throughout that 15 minutes. But the problem with that is he's not very dangerous. Yes, he has 3 KO victories in his career, but out of 11 fights as a heavyweight, that's not that impressive. And most of them are just, see, one of them here I'm looking at was a knee injury. So I don't know if that was the 3rd fight of his career. So I don't know if it was a leg kick that caused the injury or what it was. But more or less, it is a volume-based finish on the Carl Williams side. In his under the UFC banner, he has 4 fights. 1 on the Contender Series where he took on Jimmy Lawson, a collegiate wrestler who he out-wrestled, which was very impressive. I thought Jimmy Lawson was going to be able to get it done. He didn't. Then he comes in, UFC debut against Bresky. Bresky's not very good, but same idea. Carl Williams, unanimous decision over Chase Sherman, and then once again, in his last fight, unanimous decision over Justin Tafa. Now, the reason why I'm going to be going with Diniz here is because I do recognize that power. Carl Williams showed in his last fight that he will stand on the feet until he's in trouble, and then he will panic shoot. I don't know if that's going to work against somebody like Diniz. Justin Tafa was landing some bombs on Carl Williams, and Carl Williams was wobbling all over the place, but like I said, was panic shooting, ended up getting some takedowns. I think if Diniz ends up wobbling Carl Williams, he is going to be able to put him away. Diniz does not have to work on anything besides takedown defense for his MMA career, because his striking is elite. He has technical striking, and we've seen that, and he has power to go along with it. I've already mentioned this, but I think even if Carl Williams does find success getting Diniz to the ground, this is just my hopes, because Diniz only has to work on the wrestling for his career. He's already got the striking ready to go. Hopefully he can at least survive, which typically Carl Williams' opponents can do because Williams isn't a very dangerous guy. Hopefully he can fend off most of the takedowns. He can get back to his feet if he does get taken down. And I just think this is not going to be competitive on the feet. I could be completely wrong because in matches where people have that wrestling threat, the opponent is scared to kind of let their hands go because they can get taken down. But I don't see that happening with Diniz. I think Jonata Diniz can get the KO victory over Carl Williams. I just can't trust that Williams is going to come in and just wrestle immediately. I think he's going to entertain the striking exchanges like he did in the Tafa fight. And when he gets in trouble, I believe Diniz will put him away and not get taken down. So I'm going to go with Diniz here. Let's move on. I just realized I did not put the Carl Rosa and Kianzad the writing right there with the record. But Carl Rosa 17-6 in her career. Pani Kianzad 16-8. I am going to be going with Carl Rosa here. I just think she's the better fighter anywhere the fight takes place. Maybe the thing that Kianzad excels in compared to Rosa is submission grappling, but neither of these girls even have a UFC finish. Neither of them have a finish in the UFC. So I really don't think either will finish the other. That sounded quite odd. But Carl Rosa will have the volume on the feet as well. And I believe that's going to be the difference because any grappling and wrestling exchanges, they'll probably cancel each other out. And I believe if there is wrestling in this fight, Carl Rosa will probably be the one landing the takedowns. Like I said, she's going to be the better basically everywhere. She's got the volume as well. So other than the threat of a submission, which Kianzad has not successfully completed in the UFC, I think Carl Rosa gets this done. Let's move on. Next up, we got an exciting bantamweight fight. Toshiomi Kazama going up against Charalampos Grigoriou. I'm going to go with Grigoriou here, and he is actually one of my more confident picks on this card. And I may be kind of insane for saying that, but Toshiomi Kazama, he's going to want to wrestle. He will throw some hands, but typically he wants to get the fight to the ground. And Charalampos trains at the camp with Merab, Aljamain, and all those guys. And I know there's a few more that are slipping my mind right now, but I don't think Kazama's going to show Grigoriou anything that he hasn't seen in the gym with Aljo and Merab in them. So I think that's going to cancel out. I think Charalampos will be more effective if it comes down to the wrestling anyway. And Charalampos he has power. Kazama has shown to be chinny. He's been finished in both of his UFC fights. And I think if Charalampos lays a hand on him, he's going to be able to put Kazama away. Now, Charalampos, in his UFC debut, he kind of fell short going up against a veteran in Chad Anheliger, but Chad Anheliger is that savvy vet that has that tricky style, that has the higher fight IQ, that can get these UFC debuters kind of shaken up and not really know what to do and kind of lost in the octagon. And not that Charalampos looked lost, but Anheliger was able to chop Charalampos' leg throughout that fight, and that's really, I think, was the determining factor. Grigoriou couldn't find his power because he couldn't plant the shots with his leg because it was so compromised, and he couldn't really initiate that wrestling either. But against somebody like Kazama, I don't think he's going to have the skill that a veteran like Anheliger did. Like I said, Kazama wants to wrestle typically, and Charalampos isn't going to see anything that he doesn't see in the training room with Aljo and Merab. And I think Kazama is quite chinny. We've seen him get put out twice already in 2 UFC appearances, and Grigoriou has the power to KO him. So I am going to go as far as to say Charalampos gets this done by knockout. Let's keep rolling. We got another women's bantamweight fight. We got Yana Santos going up against Chelsea Chandler. Now, Yana Santos is probably the better fighter overall. If this was her pre-3-fight skid, I probably would pick her here. But the reason why I'm going to go with Chelsea Chandler is not that I think she's the better fighter, but I think Chandler's biggest the biggest thing going for her in her fights is her size. She's able to kind of bully her opponents with her size, with her strength, up against the cage, on the mat. And I think she's going to be able to do that against Yana Santos here. like Chandler typically does. She's gotten 2 wins in the UFC, nowhere near the caliber of Yana Santos. I believe it was, Julia Stoliarenko and Josiane Nunes, where she was able to use her size to kind of just fluster her opponents, just get them down to the ground or clinch them up against the cage and just get some control time and get some shots in there. And I think she's going to be able to do that to Santos. Santos is going to find success on the feet. She is the superior striker in this matchup, but I think Chandler closes the distance, uses her size to get a hold of Santos and either drag her to the ground, get in some good clinch strikes, good clinch sessions, good clinch moments, I guess. Regardless, I think the size alone will get this done for Chandler. Now, it is going to be interesting to see how she does at the weigh-ins, and even though the weigh-ins are today, I haven't seen them yet, and I'm going to go watch them after I record this video. But like I said, if this was Santos pre-3-fight skid, I maybe would pick her because I do think she's the better fighter, but I think the size and physicality of Chelsea Chandler will be the deciding factor in this matchup. I will take Chandler to get this done on the scorecards. Let's keep rolling. We got a newcomer to the UFC, Quang Le going up against Chris Gutierrez. And I'm not going to spend too much time here. I just truly believe Chris Gutierrez should get this done. He's a top 15 caliber bantamweight in a stacked bantamweight division in the UFC. I just think he's going to be miles ahead of Quang Le, who is taking this fight on extremely short notice. Chris Gutierrez was originally supposed to fight Javid Basharat, who I actually was going to pick against. I was going to pick Chris Gutierrez to beat Javid Basharat, so how am I going to pick Quang Le to beat Chris Gutierrez when I thought Gutierrez was going to beat a much better fighter in Javid Basharat? Quang Le, I think, is 7-0 in the LFA, which is fantastic for him. He's not like one of these guys that fights regional fighters out in the Eastern Hemisphere, where the skill level maybe isn't as good as maybe Europe and in North America and stuff like that, and South America, like the Western side of the world is what I'm trying to say. So good for him. He probably has a little more experience and is probably a little bit better than actually coming from his native country, which I believe is Vietnam. Regardless, what I'm trying to say is Chris Gutierrez is going to be miles ahead. I think he's definitely my most confident pick on the entire card if I'm really breaking it down like that. And I know this isn't much of a technical analysis here, but I think the cards are stacked against Quang Le here. Short notice against a top 15 fighter and in his UFC debut. So I'm going to take Chris Gutierrez. I'm pretty confident in Gutierrez this week. Let's move on. We got Nikolai Veretennikov going up against Danny Barlow. Now, Veretennikov is taking this on short notice as well. Danny Barlow was supposed to fight Uroš Medic, who I'm a huge fan of. Love Medic. Great guy. Great fighter. But regardless, Danny Barlow, left hand to God. This guy has insane power in his hands. He is 8-0, and yes, it's not too impressive. This is his sophomore UFC fight, and he did beat Josh Quinlan by third-round KO in his UFC debut. And we all know what Quinlan ended up being when he's not on steroids. Nothing. That's what he was. That's what he is without the steroids. Regardless, the impressive thing with that matchup is he pieced him up the entire fight, was never in danger, was kicking the shit out of him, and he showed that he can go a little bit longer and still hold power in the later parts of the fight. He finished him in the third round. Danny Barlow, also a Contender Series alumni, ended up putting away Raheem Forrest in like a minute or two. Destroyed him. Maybe not even 2 minutes. I think it was like a minute. Barlow has insane reach for the division as well. I think it's almost 80 inches. He's 6'2". He has that rangy style as well, and he has a wrestling base. I believe he wrestled either in high school or college. I was going to say cottage. But typically he wants to strike. Now he's taking on somebody like Nikolai Veretennikov, who I am not going to lie, I'm not going to lie, like I know a lot about Veretennikov. I only know from what I've heard other analysts break down from him, and what they'd say is that he is dangerous in that first round. He does have the skills to be in the UFC, but taking this on short notice is going to be extremely difficult. He was also on the Contender Series. He fought Michael Morales, and he took him to a decision where Veretennikov ended up losing. But typically, he does gas, and taking this on short notice isn't going to do him any favors. I think Barlow is just going to be the better fighter. He is more dangerous than Veretennikov, especially in that striking. I think the short notice is going to play a big role in this. Barlow's got power for days. I think he's going to put Veretennikov away either in the first round or the second when Veretennikov starts to slow down. But give me Danny Barlow to KO Veretennikov in his sophomore outing. Let's get into the co-main event of the evening. Damon Jackson going up against Chepe Mariscal. Now, both of these guys are kind of dogs. Like, Mariscal for sure, but Damon Jackson has shown to be a dog too, where he doesn't quit. But I am going to pick Chepe in this matchup for the sole fact that Chepe is just nonstop pressure. He's just in your face. He's a well-rounded fighter. He's not lost anywhere the fight takes place. And I think he's just going to be pushing Damon Jackson on his back foot the entire time. I think he's going to get in his face, wear him down. And where Jackson is going to excel is probably in those grappling exchanges. But Mariscal has great scrambles. He's got lots of muscle. He's a powerful guy, and I think he's going to stay safe in those grappling scenarios, not get submitted. And I think he's going to be able to beat Damon Jackson off of that pressure, off of that volume, and just outdog him. I think this is going to be a dogfight. I think Chepe outdogs him and gets it done. That's basically what my breakdown is here. Like, Damon Jackson looked good in his last fight against Alex Hernandez, but the problem is he got knocked down in that fight. So, and then he 2 fights before that got knocked out by Dan Ige. And I guess it's not as bad. Tybura knocked him out back in 2020. So maybe his chin isn't completely gone, but he has been getting knocked down lately. Chepe, maybe not the most powerful guy. Let me see. Yeah, he has no knockdowns in the UFC. He does have a KO, though. Oh, yeah, because of the injury on Jack Jenkins. Regardless, I think Chepe just outdogs him. I think he scrambles well. I think he's going to just be pressure, volume, and he's just going to overwhelm Damon Jackson. He'll be good enough to stave off those, I don't even know if I said that word right, off those grappling submission attempts. And I'm going to take Chepe to outdog Damon Jackson in this fight. The reason why I'm not more confident in Chepe is because Damon Jackson's also a dog. And he's probably not going to quit. So if Chepe doesn't put him away, this is going to be a 15-minute affair. But ultimately, I do believe Chepe Mariscal gets this done. Let's move on to the main event of the evening. Marcin Tybura going up against Sergey Spivac in a rematch. And I'm not going to lie, I don't really see much improvement from either of these guys from their previous fight. So I don't really see why it would go any different. One thing that did shock me, though, was Spivac is only 29. That's crazy. That's crazy. This guy's 16-4 in the heavyweight division. He's a literal baby. We know that heavyweights can fight into their 40s. This guy's 29 and already has 11 UFC fights. That's insanity. Tybura is 38, so he's like in heavyweight prime right now. All right? And like, people want to hate, oh, Tybura's not that dangerous, yada, yada, yada. Dude, look who he's lost to in his last, let's see. So before he beat Spivac, okay, he lost to Abdurakhimov and Augusto Sakai, all right? That was April 2019, September 2019, all right? Then he goes on this little win streak. He goes 5 wins in a row, starting with Sergey Spivac, okay? 5 wins in a row. Spivac, Grishin, Ben Rothwell, Greg Hardy, Walt Harris. 5 in a row. Then he loses to Alexander Volkov. All right? Are we really going to shit on the guy for losing to Volkov? Then he beats Alexander Romanov, who was supposed to be this absolute animal. And I'm not going to lie. All right? That wasn't the best performance by Tybura. I believe he got like 10-8'd or something in that first round. Regardless, Romanov, beats Ivanov, and then he gets knocked out by Aspinall. Okay, Aspinall's knocking out literally everybody. Are we going to hold that against him? And then he beats Tuivasa. So in his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 fights, he's lost twice. He's 8-2 in his last 10, and the 2 people he lost to is Volkov, who is a fringe title contender, and Aspinall, who is the current heavyweight champion. I'm not even going to consider John Jones as the champion, blah, 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 blah. That's for another time, regardless. So are we really going to hate on him? And then you got Spivac on the other side, though. All right? Spivac on the other side. since his loss to Marcin Tybura. Beats Carlos Felipe, beats Jared Vanderaa, beats Alexei Oleinik. Okay? Nice. 3-fight win streak. Then loses to Aspinall. Round 1 KO. We're not hating on them for that, regardless. Then he beats Greg Hardy. Augusto Sakai, he knocks out in the second round. Beats Derek Lewis, chokes him out in the first. And then he loses to Ciryl Gane. So this is going to be difficult. All right, Spivac has also only lost to the best, where Tybura has lost to Aspinall and Volkov. Since then, Spivac has only lost to Aspinall and Gane. So I don't see much improvement from either guy. Tybura is who Tybura is going to be. He's 38. Spivac may start developing new skills. He's still only 29 years old. But like I said, I don't really notice a big enough skill level increase. Jesus Christ, man, I'm butchering this whole thing from Spivac, where I'm be like, wow, this is going to be a different affair than the first one. I just don't see it. Tybura's probably going to be the better striker. Spivac wants to take the fight to the ground, and we saw that didn't really go well for him the first time. Now, I know this is 4 years in the future since their last fight, but regardless, like I keep saying, I haven't really seen much of a difference from either guy, so why would I assume that it's going to be any different from their first match? The only difference, I guess, is really that it's a 5-round fight. I don't think Spivac has ever fought 5 rounds before. And Tybura, I don't even know if Tybura has either. Let me check. He's been scheduled for 5-round fights before. But has he gone 5 rounds is the question. I don't think so. Regardless, we're going to see how it goes. That's the only difference here. So, I'm done with the breakdown. I'm picking Marcin Tybura. Let's go over the picks. And I'm going to do confidence levels now, too. So, Stephanie Luciano, probably like medium confidence. Youssef Zalal, I'd probably say he's a high confidence pick this week. Jonathan Diniz, moderate confidence. I'm not going to say low. I do believe in his abilities and his power. Carol Rosa, this is low confidence. I don't think either of these ladies are very good, and I can't put too much confidence on a low-level women's MMA fight. Charlotte Grigoriou, high confidence here because of Kazama's chin. Chelsea Chandler, low confidence. She's the underdog, and Santos is just the better fighter. Chris Gutierrez, high confidence. Danny Barlow, probably moderate confidence because even though I am... Actually, no, high confidence. I think Danny Barlow gets this done. Chepe Mariscal, moderate confidence. And Marcin Tybura, moderate confidence as well. Thank you guys so much for watching another video. Make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new. Drop a comment down below with your thoughts, whether you agree or disagree with my picks. It doesn't matter. I want to hear what you guys think. And I'll see you guys in my recap video. I'm off to post this and watch the weigh-ins. So make sure you guys follow my Twitter as well. That's where I drop my full card predictions right before the event, plus my confidence levels. And sometimes I throw in some bets ahead of time as well. So thank you guys once again. I'll see you in the next video.